You're good.
I call this meeting to order. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land in which we gather on is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Waki, the Ottawa, and Mississauga peoples. I call urgent business, number 2. In light of provincial government announcing the return to modified version of step 2 of the roadmap to reopen effective Wednesday, January 5th, 2022, all council, committee, and board meetings are required to be held through electronic participation until further notice, in accordance with subsection 5.11.1B of the Town of North Huron's procedural bylaw, as authorized. Resolution is required to be passed by council. I apologize. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby directs for all council, committee, and board meetings to be held in electronic meetings until further notice. Do I have a mover? And please speak out because I can't see everybody.
Deputy Reeve moves.
Okay, Deputy Reeve moves. Rick McBurney seconds. Any questions, comments, or concerns? And again, please feel free to speak out. Not hearing or seeing of any, I hand it over to Carson to do roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Deputy Reeve Sight,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer is currently absent. So Councillor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer. Councillor Palmer, you're muted.
Sorry. Yes.
Councillor McBurney
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 6-0.
thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Not hearing or seeing any. This correspondence 5.1 United.
So Reeve Bailey, if I can back you up, you just missed confirmation of the agenda. So basically, looking for a motion that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for the January 13th, 2022 budget meeting as presented.
Do I have a mover? I have Kevin moving. I have Anita seconding. I'll hand it over to you, Carson.
So Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer still absent. Councillor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 6-0.
thank you. And we've done 4 disclosure of pecuniary interest. Correspondence is 5.1 United Way Perth Huron requesting funding for North Huron Connections Center Pilot Project. We have a correspondence with them. Would any councillors like to speak to this or make a motion on this?
I'd like to speak.
Chris, go ahead.
I'm sorry to say this, but
Chris, we're kind of losing you. Chris, Chris, we're kind of losing you. If you can take your video off, it might help.
Sorry, Rave. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having some issues here. I just wonder, I know they mention all the things that they do and stuff, and I see all the numbers, people fed, blah, 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 all the way down. And, I see them as a data collection agency almost, because I know they didn't feed those 5,300. It was food banks. And Huron County has got umpteen food banks, Salvation Army to North Huron Food Bank. Those are all sort of independent things. So I really wonder what they're doing other than collecting numbers. And even say the women's shelter, as just picking out one more. The main funding is from the provincial government, and yes, they are a partner, somewhat of a partner with United Way. But I just, when they mentioned, 12 women and families that they helped, that's good. But what did they do actually? So I don't know. I just, just have this feeling that I'm not sure what their position is, what they really do, other than collect data
Thank you.
and statistics.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? Not hearing of anybody, I'll speak to this one. So what the United Way does is they draw all the forces together to get them in one room, so we're working together. I sit on the, I'm going to go old man blank here on you, so on the committee for the county on homeless. And it was a real eye opener to me. It's fantastic how many different committees and how many different people get together to help the people that are in need. Remember, your society will be judged on how you treat your most vulnerable. And at the end of the day, that's what it's going to be. What this is for all of council, what this is this is actually going to be a gathering location where the needy can come. There is nothing in Wingham right now. Yes, you can go to the food bank. You put your name in and you have your certain time to pick up your food. It's a great thing. And the Salvation Army and others. But what this is a gathering of everybody so that we all work in the same direction and we don't trip over each other doing the same thing, which I believe will help the needy more than anything. Homeless is just a terrible thing, and it's a growing thing, and it's not going away unless we solve the problem or start to change things. So from my personal point of view, working on both of these committees, I think we should endorse this one, and I think we should help finance this one. It would be up to the council whether they want to do the 10,000, or as you can see, they've asked for 5,000 from our neighboring communities. But again, honestly, and I won't babble on and on and on, but this is a gathering of this United Way gathers everyone, so we all work together on the same page. And a lot of people have stepped forward. We've already had meetings with this group. I believe they have a location already set out where the homeless people can actually come in this area. They don't have to somehow find a way to Goderich in the middle of a freezing night. So I'm going to open this up to Anita. You want to speak to this?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reeve Bailey. I have a little bit of trouble with their information in the letter. They say they support 5,726 people in North Huron. We don't even have that amount of people, so I would like to have them I'd like to have a better information in the letter where they want to support this, where the location will be. If this is a never-ending story of asking for money, we are also looking in our community safety plan at a gathering space for youth, so that's another area we have to support the community. I think I would defer this. I would like to defer this to our where we make our donations, and talk about it a little bit more when we have a little bit more information about what they want. If they just say, yeah, we want a space for homeless people, that's very commendable, but where do they want it? How are they gathering the money? And Wingham is a hub for people from South Bruce and Huron-Kinloss as well, so I would think they should support this as well, and they're not mentioned, and that's maybe because they're not in Bruce County, but it's still a very very close area for Wingham.
Thank you very much. I might get Dwayne to talk to a bit of this. He was at the meetings too, but I believe there was a mistake. The 5,700 would actually be Huron County. I'm taking a guess at that because I agree with you. There's not that many people, really to God, not that many people in North Huron that need help. This is a new beginning. This is a gathering of everybody. This is a place I find at the county level, and we might talk about this a little later on, but if you go north of Highway 25, we don't exist. We weren't going to have places to get your shots in North Huron. We only have one counselor for North Huron, one counselor for Morris Turnberry, and one counselor for Howick. We don't have two counselors like everybody else at the county level. And I've questioned that before, and I'm going to question it again. I don't understand that, why we don't, everybody else gets two votes. We have tried to come out of, shall we say, the woods in the last few years. This council's been very strong, very forward thinking, and this is just another one. I'm not sure what more I can say, except I'm sure you all understand I'm totally in favor of it. I'm going to go to Deputy Sipes, and then maybe if Dwayne has something, he could actually speak after Deputy Sipes. Thank you. Go ahead, Deputy Sipes.
Thank you, Reeve. So part of I think some of the confusion, and I think this is in the letter as well. I think this is understandable as Councillor Van Heersum has mentioned, is their committee that has submitted this is regarding the Northern Huron portion of the United Way. So the United Way, as you are aware, broke up into certain districts. Northern Huron, Goderich has its own. Like they kind of circulated and tried to make every region of the county its own kind of meeting place that has its own goals, has its own function, and has its own feelings as it relates to the community well-being plan. My question is, and I think that's what the numbers are based on, is the Northern Huron part. But I can't disclose whether that's correct or not correct. I mean, arguably, if I recall, we have put $5,000 currently in the community safety and well-being plan in the budget. We have nothing right now earmarked for that money because we have been waiting for the province to give us an understanding of what is the municipality's perspective as it relates to this plan moving forward, who's going to be, what is it relating to, how it's going to be established. Like there's too many unknowns as it relates to what this community safety and well-being plan that this council has requested and that was done with the United Way. My question is, if we're not willing to support, or at least without more information, I guess, my question is, what's the downside? I don't see a downside in the sense that the United Way is a community-funded organization that, you know, I agree with every other comment that yes, they are coordinating with a lot of different partnerships and practices, but all those partnerships and practices, some of them get their funding from the United Way. So I mean, I'm not exact, like we've given donations or given community support to things that, you know, in my mind is, we have to recognize that there isn't, in my mind, there's not a downside to this. So I guess I'm not sure exactly what more information you want as council, in the sense of, you know, where it's going to be, what's going to do with it. Like, I mean, if that's what you're looking for, then that's a question that we need to bring Ryan Erb to a council meeting. But my question would be is, there's more risk in not putting it in the budget now than putting it in the budget and you get an information that from the United Way, and then you decide, because there's another report that's going to have to come back from staff as it relates to all this stuff. But really the conversation, I think, from the United Way, and it's been as directed by, you know, the CAO and stuff, is to, you know, put your this is for an earmarking. This is not council is approving and moving forward. This is earmarking money, and let's get it in the budget at the very least, and try to get something that is, in my opinion, is a win-win. That's my opinion, Reeve. I'll leave it at that. I'll pass it on back to you for the CAO to talk.
Thank you very kindly. Dwayne, did you have, Dwayne, sorry, just before then, I'll let Anita speak. You're muted,
Yes,
Anita.
thank you very much. Thank you, Thank you, Deputy, for your explanation. I still think that this this letter is really geared toward a homeless shelter, and it says Northern Huron Connection Center. I would like, and I don't have trouble with earmarking something, but I'm not in favor of sending them a check for $5,000 because we still don't know what the province wants, what our community is in favor of, because I think there's lots of people like children, seniors, people who need to get out of their house for some reason, that they need a space to get a coffee or something like that. That's the information I would like to see. Where do you want it? What is the plan for this? Is it open for everybody, or is it just for people who don't have a house, or is it for women who want to escape an abusive situation? It's that's what I would like to see. And I would also like to see some information about staffing. Is it 24 hours a day? Is it, that's the information I'm looking for. So I'm not in opposed to earmarking $5,000 towards a connection center, but I am not in favor of sending a check to the United Way for something. Thank you.
Wayne, did you? Okay, the Deputy Reeve Site would like to speak first. Go ahead.
So, this is the request that to make sure it's in the budget. Nowhere are we going to be approving today that we're, at least from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Reed, but that is not the intent of this letter. The intent of the letter was we had requested them to get something to council so that we could get something in the budget if they thought it was necessary, if council thought it was imperative that we had it. Because we didn't want to hear it, we didn't want to come back later and say, oh, this was a great idea, but it's not in the budget. Now we don't move forward. So, I mean, the question is yes, there is going to be more reports come back with staff as relates to the United Way as to see how this thing could potentially roll out. My suggestion is to take this $10,000 and put it in the community safety and well-being portion of the budget, and then we can reallocate, we can do whatever we want. If it's in there, we can do that. If it's not in there, we have more harm and more risk that we have to figure out how we're going to pay for it later. That's my question. I don't think we're writing a check tomorrow at all. This is a conversation going down the line when this process and this committee is working with.
So just to follow up on that, and then I'll go to you, Chris. That is the way it should be written up. That was my understanding too. So we put it in with the other, and we put the $10,000 in there. We do not have to use it. If we don't use it, we decide not to help these people out, then it will still be it'll still be in our bank account at the end of the year, and we didn't use it, and therefore we can give it back to the ratepayers in the next budget. However you want to work that.
So if I may, Your Worship,
Yes.
I'll just clarify that it really depends on what council's intention as to whether something is going to come back, right? So as Deputy Reeve alluded to, there is funds incorporated in the draft budget for community safety and well-being plan initiatives as a broad level. If you leave it at that, basically any time to expend those funds, it requires council approval. At this time, if you specifically earmark it for this project, nothing has to come back because it's in the budget and we have direction that that's what it's spent for, right? So if council is wanting more information, what I would recommend is you leave the funds for the community safety and well-being plan initiatives in the draft budget as they currently are. And then what we can do is schedule a delegation once the budget has been finalized for United Way or the Northern Huron Community Committee to come and present and request to draw on those community safety and well-being plan funds. The reason we put this on the agenda today was if council did not want to use those community safety and well-being plan funds, but still wanted the project to go ahead, either you have to fund it from somewhere else, such as your community partnership fund, or you have to incorporate new funds in the budget. So we need that direction, right? So what I'm hearing is the intention is to draw on the community safety and well-being plan funds, but to have something come back. So what I would recommend is basically status quo, you leave those funds in the budget and we schedule someone from the Northern Huron Community Committee to come and present more information and kind of formally request drawing on those funds once the budget's passed.
Just to follow up on that, Carson, so we're all clear, I believe there's only $5,000 in that fund on the budget now, and there's a request for $10,000. So we'd have to change the budget to accommodate the $10,000.
I'm going to, yeah, through you, Your Worship, I'm going to defer to the Director of Finance on that one, but I believe I initially put 10,000 in there, but Darcy would certainly be able to correct me if I'm wrong.
Darcy, can you help us?
Certainly, through Your Worship, there is $10,000 currently sitting in the budget right now that's kind of left as earmarked for the community safety and well-being plan. So, you know, based on this discussion, all or part of it could be allocated towards this initiative.
So I think if it's okay with council, I think the way we'd move forward this is let's just take this United Perth request as for information purposes. You got the information, we've had the discussion, we'll have them come back. Staff will direct them to come back and have a conversation with us because we have the funding there. We don't really have to do anything with it today. Honestly, guys, just if I could have, and again, anybody wants to speak to it, put your hand up or say something. But I think honestly, I would just have this one as for information purposes and just move it forward. You're not committing to anything when you say information purposes only. Would I have anyone? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I agree with that, Reeve.
You would.
I want more information.
Okay, so you'll make that a motion?
Yes, I will.
Thank you kindly. Do I have a seconder? Anita seconds. Carson, I'm going to hand it over to you. Just so everybody's aware, he's just rewriting the, I presume he's just rewriting the.
That's correct, Your Worship. So thanks for bearing with me there. So Councillor Palmer and Councillor Van Hittersum, if this doesn't capture what you feel the motion should be, just let me know. But basically the draft motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the request for funding from United Way Perth Huron for information purposes, and further that the United Way Perth Huron be invited as a delegation for the purpose of providing additional information on the Northern Huron Connection Center pilot project.
Chris, that's okay?
Yes, it is.
Anita, you're fine with that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, your turn, Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum?
Yes.
Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you kindly. Moving on to number 6, the 2022 draft budget version 2. I'm not going to read the bylaw out. We're going to have Darcy speak to it, I believe. Darcy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if Carson could let me share my screen if he hasn't already.
Yep, you should have sharing permissions now.
Perfect. So I hope everybody can see the PowerPoint presentation on their screen now. So we're just going to run through a handful of slides here just to give council an update as to where we are in the process and kind of where the budget sits right now and how it also affects the average taxpayer. So, early on, the original budget framework was to develop a core operating budget with no service level changes. The budget does include some additional staffing and cleaning costs and security services related to COVID. The budget, of course, also includes the 4 enhancements that Council had provided direction on, which was museum operations, an economic development position, human resources contract position, and a market check, and then a council chambers and facility capital project. So I'll touch base on some of these as we roll through each of the different slides here. So the budget also includes a 2.41% COLA adjustment, which was approved by council in early December. So the base budget has a bunch of assumptions built into it for effectively what are uncontrollable increases and reductions based on some of our funding partners, decisions that are made above and beyond us, or changes to our projects from last year. So in total, it's only a $37,000 net increase, but as you can see from the slide on the screen, there are a lot of pluses and minuses that roll into this to get us to that $37,000. I think it's important that to note that we've been able to mitigate a lot of cost increases like COLA, insurance, grid level, the COVID related costs, because we had some reductions within the economic development budget because of not having to fund any more of the trailer park and Hutton Heights projects, the reduced airport budget, and the reduced armories budget because of decisions that council have made over the last couple of years. So we've also had to deal with some staff-led kind of changes since the December 9th budget meeting. We had to increase the property standards contract requirements by an extra $7,000 and the drainage inspection contract requirements by $5,000. If council needs any further direction or understanding of that, Dwayne or Carson could speak to it. But ultimately, we've got ourselves into a position where because of the changing agreements with the CBO related contract with the neighboring municipality, we're now having to contract some of our services just to make sure that there's additional coverage and weekend coverage, or when people are on holidays, sick, so on and so forth. So we had to increase budgets for that. The Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, we had put in a small increase within the original draft budget. They, of course, have finalized more their budget deliberations, and we've had to increase the MVCA levy by an additional $5,081. Although we had insurance premium increases built into the budget, the insurer did not provide us at the time with the complete increase in cost because they did not include the non-refundable PST on the insurance premiums, which means that there's an extra $13,760 that had to be built into the budget. So in many cases, the municipality gets a significant tax credit back for the taxes that we pay. However, there is a loophole with regards to insurance premiums on the PST, and we don't get that money back. So that's why it had to be included in the budget. As well, Marty has done some final calculations with the fire partners regarding getting the final assessment totals in. So based on the final revised assessment totals, we've actually allocated an extra $3,869 back to the fire partners. So that helped to reduce the budget slightly. So there was some, yes, go ahead, Reeve.
Thank you very kindly. Just over to Anita, the $5,000 for the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, what percentage increase do you know off the top of your head? And I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Riveli. No, I don't know the percentages. Years ago, the Maitland Valley agreed to do a maximum increase of 5.8%. But right now, because of the mandatory regulations they were put up from the province, they had to increase their budget by this, and it's really really a big deliberation that we had at the board level for the Maitland Valley. They also had an increase of usage of the conservation areas. There is a larger demand of watershed stewardship, so they have way more services right now than they do in the beginning, and their mandatory services that they can't do anything about, or just so much that they need to increase their budget right now.
Okay, thank you very kindly.
You're welcome.
So the next slide here talks about some of the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, sorry, Darcy. I had a question about the COVID wages supply security contracts. It's up almost $150,000. Did you also take with that amount the reduced costs because of COVID, like the closure of the rec centers and the layoff of staff, or can I find that somewhere else?
No, we have not tried to readjust the budget because of the next 3 weeks. In reality, the staff layoffs that have happened right now are a direct result of the programs that they would have supported. So since we're closed, we don't have revenues coming in for those programs. So therefore, we also don't have the expenses for the staff. So at least in the short term, we believe really just to be like a net zero kind of effect on what we're doing. I mean, if this goes on, for a significant period of time, kind of like what happened last year, where we, take the ice out, let's say, the impact of the budget will actually be more of a negative than it ever would have been a positive. But let's hope we don't get to there.
Okay. Yeah, right. Thank you very much.
So on December 9th, through the reef here, Council had made some decisions, provided some direction to staff during the budget deliberations. The first one was to take what were some part-time staffing costs at the childcare center and actually turn the position into a full-time position. That has resulted in an additional $11,000. Really what it is it's the cost of the benefits and whatnot, and the top up of some of the hours just to get to a full 1,950-hour position. Council also provides some direction on the economic development or business development officer wages, recognizing that by the time we actually got through the budget and then through the whole process of recruitment and whatnot, it probably wouldn't be until April kind of before we had somebody in place. So because of that, we reduced some of the wages to align with a later in-year start, which is helped by $15,650. So we'll get through the slide deck, and then the CAO and Ms. Last will be able to talk about the economic development position in particular and how it's would fold into what the county is doing. So if you have any questions specifically related to that, we can wait until after the slide deck's done. Although there was no real impact to the budgets, to help one way or another, Council did reallocate $3,000 from the tourism special projects into the Blythe campground budget, specifically related to marketing of the campground again for 2022. As well, Council reallocated $2,000 from economic development into the council budget, and then renamed one of the line items community partners funding, because that's really what that money has been used for historically. So now with that $2,000, it's now a total of $6,000 in that line item. There was also a discussion about the museum facility funding, recognizing that there was, we weren't too sure if there was actually going to be any facility operations in 2022. So Dwayne, Vicky, and myself met with the property owner, Mr. Kyvenhoven, last week and had a discussion about kind of when we saw a cutover of responsibilities taking place. And ultimately, I think we've come to realize that both from the municipality's perspective and also from Mr. Kyvenhoven's perspective, that a significant amount of the fundraising for this project really needs to happen before anybody would be comfortable, both from our perspective and from his, in making any kind of, a guaranteed cutover of ownership responsibilities. So, their fundraising goal is somewhere around $400,000, and we really don't feel as though, that's attainable. Certainly in the short term, it'll definitely take at least a full year to do that. So, based on that, we've removed $25,650 from the budget, specific to what we're going to be the operating costs. So, heat, hydro, insurance, so on and so forth. So that's been removed from the budget for 2022. Recognizing that it'll at least be 2023 before we would have to incur any of those costs. So just wanted to clarify with council, we did have, of course, some discussion earlier on today about donations, but your budget now for the community partners funding is $6,000. To date, you have approved $125 for the Plowman's Association, $300 for the school fair, and $500 for the hospice, for a total of $925. So you have about just over $5,000 still remaining in that budget for future allocations if something should come up throughout the year that you deem is worthy of funding. So the overall budget, what we're looking at right now, we started with the.
Darcy,
Yeah,
I think
sorry.
Christopher had his hand up, I believe. Did you, Chris? You're muted, Chris.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Rave. There we go. I was just wondering, like, we've had an inquiry about sort of an improvement in the hospital there, maybe an MRI or some MRI machine. There could very well be a request for funding for it. Is that something that we would, council would think about, and would this be the time to do it?
I'm not sure if Darcy wants to answer that one, or maybe Dwayne, CEO.
Well, through your worship, I don't believe we've seen anything formal come through yet with regards to this. And I think if we do, then that's probably the time, through a council meeting when it's actually on the agenda for council to have that discussion, so you understand what the request is actually for. But certainly,
Darcy, I can actually provide some clarity too. So the request that council will be aware of was at this time just a letter of support. And so that letter of support is to apply for funding, I believe, from the Ontario government for the MRI machine. So at this point in time, there is no request for funding from the municipalities, just support for the project so that the Listowel Wingham Hospital Alliance can advocate for basically the MRI machine. So at this time anyways, there's not any expectation from municipalities to provide funding towards that initiative.
And I'm going to switch it over to Anita. She had her hand up. She sits on a hospital board. You're okay, Anita? Okay. So, and I'll just do a little follow-up to that. Did just come in. It is just for support because they have to get the okay from the government. And they probably in a couple, 3 years will be coming back for financial support. That's just the way the water flows. But yeah, it's just, and I believe I've asked it to be on the next council meeting, so it should be part of the agenda. It just came in, Chris. So we are working on it. Thank you.
Ray?
Yes.
I was just, I agree. They're just wanting support. I was just wondering if we needed room in the budget to handle such a future request. But if you're thinking it could be a year or two or whatever down the road, then that's fine.
Thank you kindly. And again, anybody just speak up, because when Darcy has his projector up here, I can only see 3 of you. So,
Reeve here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to recognize that we're not the only municipality, right? Like Goddard put one in, Clinton's gonna it's just basically a call for an MRI machine in the area. So every hospital in the in southwestern Lynn is probably gonna look for a plan to do this. It's probably not it's a new council decision. That's probably a year at least out before the province even they're in an election year. They're not going to be handing out MRI money here in the next 6 months. I look at this to be a year and a half by the time it comes back for any kind of funding request and it'll be the hospital foundation that sends a request, if anything.
Thank you. Darce, back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yeah, just touching on, we started the budget process out recognizing that last year's levy was $6,360,000. We've included an extra $133,813 in the base budget, so that equates to 2.11%, and that's reflective of all of those fixed costs, the COLA, the COVID related costs, everything that we've had to incorporate into this. Some of those additional things that we touched base on just over the last couple of slides that were either directions of council or things that staff had to include. I think that looking at a base budget increase that's 2% when we've had to incorporate over $100,000 or right around $100,000 in total COLA costs, I think is pretty admirable from both council's perspective and trying to hold the line on services, and also all the staff that put time into these budgets to try and make sure that they've become as efficient as they can and reduce costs where possible, or have been looking at different revenue generating streams to offset those costs. So, in a year where in Canada we're seeing 4 or 5% inflation. The U.S. just came out with numbers where their latest data is showing a 7% inflation. For us to stick at 2% on our base budget, I think is pretty darn good. The budget includes an extra $70,350, which is just over 1.1% for museum operations still. So what this really is it's $70,000 specifically for artifact deaccessioning and cataloging. And then there's $350 in there just for some basic support services for that, for either phone or fax, printing, so on and so forth. So it's really just that $70,000 contract, whether that's through an independent third party that comes in, or whether we hire staff. We still really don't completely know what the best route is for that. But there's $70,000 earmarked for the deaccessioning, and I know that the board's the museum committee's plan, that's really a 2-year process. So we would be coming back next year again with another $70,000 ask to get this project done, because they were assuming $140,000 to actually do the whole thing. The economic development officer, again, $72,350, which is just over 1.1%, and that's to bring a permanent economic development or community development person in that would be starting, probably in April. And again, Dwayne and this last will be talking about this position and how it would actually roll out. The human resources and market check is just over $82,000 or 1.3%. So right now we have a human resources coordinator on staff working 4 days a week. This would extend, that was for a 1-year contract, so it was in the 2021 budget. This would extend that contract for at least another year to get us through 2022. And then as well, there's $20,000 that's allocated towards a market check. And the market check, the process behind that, I know that the CAO has talked about this with council, but just for anybody who's listening, the point behind the market check is for an independent third party to go out and take a look at all of the comparable municipalities that we have and what their pay scales are. And then based on council's direction as to whether we want to pay at the 40th or the 50th or the 60th percentile of our comparators, they run that analysis to then show us where we're at with regards to our compensation scales. And then lastly is the council chambers or facility review for $40,000. This is just about 0.6%. So just want to make it extremely clear to council that this $40,000 will not fund a new space for you. The intention of this $40,000 is really to get engineering or architectural work completed on a space once council determines where they actually want to go as a permanent location. Or in the alternative, if we can't come up with a permanent location, this $40,000 will buy us some basic furniture and technology to outfit a temporary space to get us out of the Opera House, because we know that that's not a long-term solution for us. So in reality, if we're going to move into a permanent location from staff's perspective, we're probably looking at, having to have a budget of $200,000 or more. But that's really a 2023 budget item because we need to go through the process of determining the location and getting approval from council for that, then going out and getting a consulting architect to actually do the analysis on that location to understand what has to be done from a renovation or retrofit perspective, and then go through that whole process. So the $40,000, I just want to make it clear to council, is not going to buy you new space so that it's ready for the end of this year. It is simply going to go through the process of determining the location and what has to be done at that location. So we take a look at the base budget and those 4 enhancements to the services. We get to a total of $6,759,000, which means that we're just short of requiring an extra $400,000 for this year's budget, which works out to 6.28%. So how does this break down, this $6.7 million? Of course, I think that it's no surprise that half of our budget is taken up by the operations and the recreation and culture, because those are the main service areas that we have within the municipality. Policing also takes up 17% of the total budget. We are putting 10% of that levy into capital projects right now in 2022, or transfers to reserves for projects that we know that are coming down the pipe within the next couple of years. And then there are smaller amounts for the fire services, bylaw and whatnot, and protective services. General government includes everything from CAO, clerk, human resources, finance, so on and so forth. And then there's a very small amount for the planning and development budget. Of course, we have to talk about the user pay budget because it's separate from taxation. And this is just kind of a regurgitation of what council was made aware of from December 9th. And this is reflective of the direction that council provided a couple of years ago when we went through the business plans and the overall funding requirements through the drinking water quality management system to make sure that we were funding our water and sewer appropriately. And at that time, council gave approval for 7.1% increases for both water and sewer rates. What that means is an extra $94,000 in revenue for the water system and $73,000 in revenue for the sewer system. In large part, that additional revenue is being offset by increases to the Veolia contract, distribution and maintenance both for the water and the sewer systems, and then some additional money going into capital projects and reserves for future works.
Darcy, if you don't mind me just jumping in there, could you just remind me of why we're doing an $87,200 increase in a contract? Are we hiring more people on? But that, to me, that's going to be for people. That's not physically putting a part in.
Yes, Your Worship. So we have a long-term contract, like operations contract with Veolia for both the water and the sewer. And as part of their contract, there's annual increases that are, based on that contract. And those annual contract increases amount to $87,200.
Yeah, it's contract.
So whether they hire more staff, I doubt it. It's probably just to deal with all of their inflationary factors as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
Kurt, there's just, you would know off the top of your head when that contract, you said it's a long term, how many years, you know?
I actually don't. I would defer to Jamie to provide that information.
And Jamie, again, if I put you on the spot, it's not a big deal. You can just send all of this information later.
5 years.
Thank you. Still 5 years to go, or it was a 5-year contract?
It was just a 5-year contract. So yeah. By 2026.
Okay. We're stuck with it till 2026. Okay, thank you.
All right, great. So again, I wanted to break down the user rate dollars. So this looks significantly different from the tax side of things, of course, because there's really only 4 areas. And the pie really is pretty evenly split between operating costs for water and sewer versus the amount of money that's going into capital or like in your capital or future reserve funds. So certainly, I think we're trying our best right now based on the rate structure that we've got to put as much money as we can into future capital needs, because we know that the systems are getting older and are in need of significant repair, maintenance, and reconstruction. So we need to keep putting money away into the water and sewer reserves to make sure that they're fully funded as is required by the legislation from the province. I hope that these numbers show up well enough on everybody's screen. We'll take a look at some of the tax examples that have been pulled. I know that Donna, when she was here, always provided some examples, so I've tried to do the same thing. There's more examples of properties within the actual budget package that was provided to council as part of the agenda. So I just pulled a few of these out. So the intention behind this, of course, is to illustrate that even though right now we're looking at a 6.28% increase in the budget, that's not actually what the taxpayer in North Huron is going to see as an increase in their taxes. So in Wingham, they'll be looking at about 3.24%, and Blythe 4.27%, and East Wawanosh 5.74%. Now, there's two reasons for that why these numbers don't, completely equal 6.28. The first is that within the three wards, we have specific costs for policing, and especially within the Wingham ward, our policing actually costs went down slightly for 2022. So that's why there is a significant difference. You remember the pie chart I showed earlier, policing makes up 17% of the budget. So if 17% of your budget is actually going down instead of going up by that average 6.2%, it makes an impact on taxation. The other thing that is affected by this for all three of the wards is growth. So we've seen overall within North Huron assessment growth of about 0.8%. So that assessment gets spread out between the three different wards, and it helps to offset the overall cost impacts and the increase to the tax rates for the year. So actually, in large part, the growth that's hit the assessment or the roll this year was in Blythe, which is why you can see that Blythe is only showing 4.27% as an increase. So the assessment really been helped out within Blythe. So I just wanted to make it clear that the rate increase that the properties are going to see will not be 6.28%. It will be less than that, depending on which of the three different areas you live in. So just to wrap up here, unless anybody's got some specific...
Councillor Palmer.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. Darcy, the farm selected in East Wawanosh doesn't work anymore. We need there isn't a house assessed at 103. There's so many new houses in the township, and most of the assessment has gone up at least equal to Wingham's. So I'm wondering, we should have a better example. Plus, it should be a 200-acre farm. There's very few 100-acre farms anymore. Then it would be more of a realistic example.
Yes, Your Worship. Actually, I ran some numbers because I've had some questions about this over the last couple of days from a couple different councillors, and the reality is that so we have about 2,450 properties within North Huron, and of those 2,450 properties, 1,400 of them are considered residential. So that's about 57% of the total property mix within North Huron. And the average assessment for those residential properties is $195,000. So, of course, there are some that are higher and there are some that are lower. That's why, how you get to an average. But when we look at the screen and actually see you know, the assessment numbers that I provided for both Wingham and Blythe at 331 and 283, those are like $100,000 over the average assessment that we're seeing in North Huron. So if I looked at the average property assessment, used $195,000 in Wingham, what would happen is that average taxpayer, that property owner, would see an increase of about $91. In Blythe, using the same $195,000, the average property owner would see an increase of $95. And in East Wawanosh, the average property owner would see an increase of $115. So when we're making decisions, we shouldn't be looking at, you know, higher assessed property. And the reality is farm taxes, even if it's assessed at $854,000, the tax rate is significantly less. So that's why there's, you know, it's a 75% reduction on the taxes. That's why the impact isn't so great. So, you know, when council's making a decision, you should probably keep in mind that depending on where your taxpayer is living, whether it's Wingham, Blythe, or East Wawanosh, the average person is going to see an increase in their taxes based on the budget the way it is right now of between $91 and $115. That's what the average taxpayer is going to be impacted by.
Thanks, Doris. Doris, I just want to, just a quick one, throw this out there. So if we didn't have 3 different locations and we were all under one location, would that have any effect on taxes at all? Like a house, I always said a house is a house is a house, farm's a farm. Does it make any difference in the tax structure for the 3 of us if we were one area instead of the 3 separate areas?
Well, of course, I have to give you the confusing answer of yes and no. Again, you know, referring back to that pie chart of 17% being policing. So 83% of the budget is split up equally across the entire municipality. So it doesn't make a difference where you live, whether it's Wingham, Blythe, or East Wawanosh, 83% of that budget gets split the same way. It's the 17% that gets parsed out differently depending on where you live and the cost of policing services. So if we ever got to I think as long as we have different levels of policing within the different areas based on the current contract that we've got, you have to have those area ratings. If we ever get to a point where we have one contract for the entirety of North Huron for policing, then it's the same level of service, it's the same cost. That's when we can rid ourselves of area rating, because there'd be no point in me doing, you know, an area rating exercise because everybody's going to have the exact same tax rate. You know, it just adds extra work to myself and the rest of the finance team. So when we can, you know, make a change to policing, that's when we can make a change to the area rating, and then that's when the blended rate will be exactly the same for everyone.
Thank you. Go ahead, Anita.
Yep. Yes, Blythe and East Wawanosh both have same policing. So why is there still the difference in taxes, 1.5%?
Again, through your worship, it's because of the assessment growth, and also because of the fact that in East Wawanosh, sorry, in Blythe and Wingham, I believe it is, there are specific costs, although very small, relating to the overall street lighting. So there's street lighting that's also parsed out, but it's like $100,000 budget in total, but it makes a slight difference. I think the other thing that we need to realize is that even though the policing, the level of policing is the same, the process for splitting the cost of policing has been done the same way since amalgamation, and that was based on historical percentages. And I think that maybe those percentages don't accurately reflect the actual assessment mix of all the municipalities, or all of the former municipalities. And that's why I think there's some differences between the Blythe and the East Wawanosh, because I guess in reality, probably there's slightly more of the policing cost that is being allocated to East Wawanosh than Blythe based on that total assessment.
Thank you very much, Darcy. Anyone else? Hey, Darce, did you just want to wrap it up?
Yep. So the next process for us really here is, if council thinks that there are significant further changes that are required, that would really, especially that would impact like a level of service to something that we're already doing, we really should be scheduling another meeting so that I can bring back those impacts to council so you can have that discussion, or we can bring back analysis as to what council's requests are for service level changes. So we would have to, throw together another meeting probably near the end of the month, and then hope to aim for adopting the budget at the February 21st meeting. If no further changes really are required that are significant, we could adopt the budget in principle today. I would prepare a public budget presentation that would happen at the 7th meeting on February 7th. And then after going through that public presentation, we would then be able to adopt the bylaw at the February 7th meeting. So depending on which stream council goes down today, based on the discussion that you're going to have, will determine whether we can adopt the budget hopefully on the 7th or on the 21st, and whether we need to have another meeting or not. So at that, my presentation's done. I'll end the slideshow and stop sharing my screen. Hopefully I can figure that out. And then we can open it up for council to have those discussions. And then if you need assistance from any one of us on the senior management team, we of course can step in and provide any guidance to council. And we'll also let the CAO have a discussion and Ms. Glass from the county with regards to the economic development.
So I'm just wondering, while Darcy's doing that, and if I'm not sure if anybody had their hand shaken. There we are. Paul, you weren't here in the beginning. We've invited Vicki Last to come and speak to us about how the economic development works at the county, and what we would be doing at our end, and how they work together or don't work together. I'm going to suggest, Vicki's been very kind. She's very busy to wait for all this time. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be better if she spoke now about that before we get into a full conversation about the presentation that just happened. Would council be okay with that? Not hearing any.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead,
Yeah.
Chris, go ahead.
Oh, a definite yes.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. Okay, great. Vicki, if you're still handy, then we're going to have you speak to what the county does, and how, if we had our own economic development officer, how that would work. I'm going to hand it over to you if you're handy.
Oh, there. Thank you very much, Mr. Reeve, and I appreciate the time on your agenda today. I thought I'd do three things in my presentation. First, I'd just like to tell you about the makeup of the department, who works within the department, and how those positions are funded, and what their focus is. And then I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the BR&E and strategic planning process we're in right now. So explain that to you a little bit more. I will be coming before council with a BR&E full presentation a little later on, either later this month or early February. And then I'd like to talk to you about how we can work together and outline where the alignment could be if you were to hire an economic development person, or even if you weren't, what we can offer to you as one of our municipal partners. So to start with, the department has a number of different functions. We are home to the Small Business Enterprise Center, which is partially funded by the province. We have two positions within that Business Enterprise Center. And the main objective is to work directly with businesses to coach them through the business life cycle. So we do startup programming, Starter Company Plus, which is running right now. We have 16 new entrepreneurs exploring entrepreneurship and building business plans and getting ready to launch businesses across Huron County. In the summer, we offer Summer Company to help youth entrepreneurs start businesses and run them. And when we define youth in this program, it's up to age 29. Both of these programs have a granting component. So we actually give them grant dollars after something that's kind of like a dragon's den. So the winner will get funding to start their business through those programs. The other things we do include one-on-one business coaching. We offer training right now, webinars, used to be courses. So still courses, just delivered online like everything else. But we will also do one-on-one consultations. So that encompasses 2 of the positions in the department. In addition to that, we have funding for digital service squad members. And for any of you who have a business downtown, the first round of funding was for downtown businesses to help them move to an online platform and increase their digital presence. It is now open to all businesses across the county. We've had a second round of funding, which ends on the 17th of February of this year. We have funding for 3 people who offer those services, and they work geographically. So each of the 3 cover 3 different partner municipalities. We have just been given word that those positions will be funded again for another 2 years. And those positions are fully funded through a provincial program. So we provide them space and supervision. They're part of my team, but all of the dollars for those salaries and associated expenses are covered. So we're very excited to learn that we're going to get them again. They're doing a lot of work. And so there is one individual that is devoted to North Huron, and she does work for you with your businesses throughout that area. So that's one segment of what we do, which is direct small to medium-sized business support. Of course, if a large business comes and asks for assistance, we don't say no, but our focus is on small and medium-sized businesses, which is the majority of businesses in Huron County. But I'll talk more about that when I come to council to present the BRNE. Another program that we have, so that's 5 staff members work directly for small businesses. The other program that we have under our umbrella is the Local Immigration Partnership, and that is a federally funded program. And right now we're heading into year 2 of a 5-year contract under that program, and we have, guess it's about 1 3/4 positions under that program. So one individual works full-time and the other individual works, I guess, more than 3/4, 4 days a week. And what they do, and the reason they sit under economic development, is they're working towards helping Huron to attract more new Canadians and make them feel welcome and retain the new Canadians that are in our communities now. The reason they sit in the economic development department is this is really entrepreneur and workforce development. So we all know that we have workforce shortages. We all know that we need more people to do the jobs that are available in Huron County. I believe we have over 800 vacant positions in the county right now. So it's very important that we attract people. And we're good at attracting people who want the lifestyle of Huron County, but often they're sort of in that 50+ age group. So they're not necessarily in our workforce for very long or full-time. So that the work around the immigration partnership is really focused at attracting new Canadians to Huron County and then making sure that they feel part of our community. And so that's education for residents and also assistance for the newcomers. So that's 2 more of the positions in the department. And then in addition to that, we have 2 economic development officers. So very similar to the position that you're discussing, we have 2 individuals. When we are at full complement, we have 3. One of our economic development officers is currently on a mat leave, and the funding for her position, which is completely funded by the county, has been redirected to specifically a housing project that's being led by planning. So at the moment, I have 2 other staff, Alex Ripley, who you may be familiar with, and Rick Sickinger. So Rick Sickinger has come to us during the pandemic from cultural services, and tourism is his forte. And he's concentrating on that tourism and hospitality sector, and working with the Ontario's West Coast brand, including Taste of Huron. So he does work across the county on tourism, hospitality, and Ontario's West Coast. That includes things like the trail guide that you will have seen. He does a lot of work on advertising and promotions. So he's very involved in that sector, arts, and our theaters, such as the Blythe Theatre. That's his work. And of course, that's done across the county. Then Alex Ripley, who is also an economic development officer, to date has been focused on the ag sector in his work. But because we are short one position at the moment, Alex is kind of in charge of everything else. And so some of the work that he's doing right now includes looking at a transportation study. Our businesses are suffering right now with the cost of trucking and the availability of trucking to move products out of the county. There's been a huge increase in the cost of rail and also the availability of rail. So he's doing some work around that. He is compiling, he's doing work like a vacant lands and vacant industrial buildings, building a database of those types of properties, because we will often get inquiries from new businesses or businesses looking to expand to say, I'd like to come to Huron County, or I'd like to grow in Huron County, what's available. Often those requests are very short notice, and if they're from out of the county, we're competing with other counties. We're not the only one they're requesting. So he does work along that line. He also does business to business support throughout the county. So he has a lot of different projects on his plate. And then in addition to that, we have a office manager support. She pretty much does everything. And that's Rianne, who works in our department. And she supports all of us in the work that we do. And then myself. So that's kind of an overview of who we are and a sense of some of the projects that we do. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about the process that we're involved in. The Economic Development Department had a 2016 to 2020 strategic plan that obviously has expired. And we're in the process of working on our new strategic plan. And that's where the Business Retention and Expansion Project, or the BRE project, comes in. So to build a good, solid strategic plan, we really need to build that on data. And we can get lots of general data and data that is specific to Huron County, but we wanted first-person data. So we've been conducting a Business Retention and Expansion project across the county. We sent surveys out. And a Business Retention and Expansion project is an internationally recognized economic development tool. So, the staff I forgot to mention, most importantly, is Cole Nicholson, and he is exclusively on contract to do the BRE project, and that's partially funded by OMAFRA. So Cole has sent out over 3,360 surveys. That's the number of businesses on our business list, but there are 6,000 businesses in Huron County. So Alex is also working to get more people on that business list so that we can directly communicate with everyone. So through that survey process, we've heard from over 723 businesses. That's a 21% response rate. And it's quite an in-depth survey, and you will be getting a copy of the results in the agenda package that's related to my upcoming presentation. But what this gives us is a wealth of information that it allows us to build our work on so that we can target directly to the needs of our business community. So when you ask what we do, I've given you an overview of what we're doing now, but we're in the process of determining that next strategic plan. And it is our intention to consult further with sector groups and community groups across the county over the next 6 weeks, and then work towards putting our strategic plan together. And we will be communicating with you throughout that process. And we will be looking for your input and what is most important to you. Now, as you will understand from my outline of the staff within the Economic Development Department, we don't have, it seems like a large complement, but a lot of them are specifically funded for a specific task. And so our ability to serve beyond those tasks right now is limited to 2 staff and myself. Although the other individuals are obviously helping our business community, working on larger issues like workforce. For one-off projects, we don't have an awful lot of capacity to work directly one-on-one on single projects with our partner municipalities. We work more broadly across the county. It is our plan that our Small Business Enterprise Center will be, though, fanning out across the county. And so what we're looking to do is have remote locations, so not just be located in Godrich. That will still be our main office because that's where the Economic Development Office is, but we'll be looking to partner with municipalities and have a business coach available within the partner municipalities on a regular and rotating schedule. We're not sure what that will be yet, but it will be no less than once a month. We're hoping for at least twice a month in different locations. So the coach might be in North Huron 4 times a month, twice in Wingham, twice in Blythe, but we'll be trying to figure out demand and reach that demand by bringing our services to you instead of requiring everyone to travel to Godrich. So that is one service I can tell you that we will be bringing to your community directly. But as we work through our strategic plan in consultation across the county, we'll be determining what we can actually provide to you. What I will tell you most definitely is that I will be in consultation with Dwayne and looking at what your needs are and how we can work to provide those. And most especially, should you hire an economic development officer, we would work closely to align, to complement, and to support that individual. That's the relationship we have right now with other lower tiers who have an economic development officer. Although at the moment, only Central Huron has an economic development officer. As you know, Huron East had an economic development officer who did a tremendous amount of work, but we would support that work both in Huron East and Central Huron by, for example, we have a dashboard of data and information, and so helping to structure that data information so that those economic development officers can go on and do recruitment based on stats and data, or form their strategic plans based on that stats and data. We will help coach and assist, and we will make sure that none of our programs would duplicate programs that are happening at the partner municipality level. So I hope that helps to give you a sense of who economic development is at the county level and what we do right now, understanding that we are in that process of developing our next strategic plan, but we will be doing that in consultation with you so that we do not duplicate services. We're also consulting highly with other economic development organizations, such as Paul Nickel at Community Futures Huron. So again, making sure that our work complements each other but does not overlap or duplicate. So one of my staff members, Alex Ripley, sits on the board of Community Futures Huron so that we can be closely aligned and look for those synergies but not the duplications. And we also work closely with the BIAs, the chambers, and again, to help and assist, to align, but to avoid duplication. And so I hope that helps you in understanding who we are and what we can do. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to field those now.
Thank you very much, Vicki. Questions or comments or concerns from council? I'm going to start with Kevin. Go ahead, Kev.
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you, Vicki, for that overview of that the broad scope that you've are tasked with looking after. I just have to play the devil's advocate a little bit, just to see if I can get some clarification that the reason most people would want to duplicate a economic development or in a position in their municipality when we have one in our county. It's just that there's a large gap between when something comes up at the county, and by the time like North Huron gets to wave our little flag and look at us up here, maybe consider us. Those decisions are already made, or we feel that they would never would ever be in the running for anything, because it just seems to be more like the county seats in Goderich, and that's where everything goes, or it goes to the center of the municipality in Clinton, because the centralization talk. What I think, well, that's the reason why we would normally look at, or why we look at getting a person of our own to do our own attempt at doing the exact same thing. So it is duplication of services, but only because the services don't feel, to at least to our municipality, that they're equal in the scope. And as the Reeve can contest to, early on in our in this council's sitting, we were approached to come to a meeting with I guess the Douglas Pointer, the nuclear portion up in Bruce, and they showed a map of where all the new businesses were going, and right where we are, there was a great big hole. There was just nothing. It was everything around us. I mean, businesses were going to Exeter, businesses were going to Clinton, Goderich, Bayfield, but not here. And I can never find out a reason why. I guess the second portion of my question would be, how do you see that we could close the gap so that we get the services that we would like from your economic? Is there a gap there? Is there something we're not doing to make people look towards us? And is that something that your organization could help us with?
Okay.
That was long. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So first, I would like to say that I think having your own economic development officer would not be duplication; it would be expansion, and it would be focus. And so, should you decide to go with an economic development officer, we would undoubtedly work closely together and align. But from my overview, you may have the sense that we really don't have the capacity to get into individual development at each partner municipality to a great degree. So to attract those businesses into your area, there are a number of focused activities that an economic development officer could do. And I would probably say, there's some really great examples of what Jan Hawley accomplished in Huron East, for example. So she did, she actually worked with some of the universities that have students looking to do projects, and was able to get some great heritage studies done that helped to improve their downtown, making it more attractive to new businesses and investors. We're all familiar with the Win This Space project, which I know that Wingham ran something very similar, but more in depth, she did things like the cleanup of brownfield sites, making them ready to go, shovel ready to go on the market, and then looking at attracting businesses to those sites, development of industrial sites and manufacturing sites and the promotion of that, direct support to individual businesses, which included connecting them to county programs. We think we're not all that large, and we think that we're communicating effectively, and yet so many of our businesses don't even know that the economic development department exists. And if they do know it exists, they don't know that we have resources for them. So there was a lot of communication helping businesses directly access services from like the Small Business Center. So there is the ability to enhance the work being done through economic development by having an economic development officer. At the same time, I can't say specifically what we can do for you at that granular level, but the work we do that goes cross-county when we're looking at issues like workforce, infrastructure development, things like some of the big things on Alex's plate besides the housing study that we're participating in, but planning is leading right now, are access to natural gas. We're working on, as I said, transportation, things like that. We hope that our work then benefits the entire county. That is our aim. But our projects are mainly those high-level projects that will influence the entire county. And there's not a lot of resources to actually work in depth within our partner municipalities on a one-to-one basis. Does that help?
Deputy Reeve Sipes, thank you. Oh, sorry, thank you, Vicki. Sorry. Go ahead, Deputy Reeve Sipes.
Yeah, I look at it as right now we have the ability to get any of that information from the county today. Like any of the fee, any of the structure, any of the studies, all of that is available to our municipality today. Where the
Correct.
biggest concern that we have, and I think this is a recognizing about how granular can we get, is I think we have to recognize if we want something for North Huron, we are going to have to get it. We should not be expecting the county just to say, oh, by the way, something went to Central Huron or Exeter or South Huron the last 2 times. Oh, I'm going to take a look at North Huron this time. That's not how business works. I mean, if we want something, we're going to have to be focused and controlled and to look for those opportunities. And where I think we're missing the boat, and that's where I think this economic development officer can be done, is right now that economic development stuff is being done by a reactionary approach, only because that's what we've got. I mean, we can't ask our CAO to do any more hours in the day for economic development. We can't ask our Reeve to do any more hours in the day to do economic development. What we need is somebody specifically dedicated to economic development with true goals in mind, meant by our council, not necessarily this council, but any council, as to a strategic plan as it relates to economic development, so that they understand, no different than anybody else's job, your job is based on this strat plan. If you are not successful on that plan, you may not have a job. That is the reality of economic development. If you're in economic development, you have to recognize that a lot of people look at economic development and say, give me something that I can handhold, that I can hold in my hand that says it's worth paying somebody X amount of dollars. Well, that's very hard to do. That is very hard to do from an economic development standpoint. So what you have to have is benchmarks and understanding, and that's the things that, Huron East and Central Huron and, the town of Minto, they have those things. They have those benchmarks. They have those plans. We can't do those on the side of our desk. And that's what that's what the CAO is doing right now. And I think if we don't do an economic development officer, I think we're in an opportune time with the significant residential growth that we're going to be having and the potential for other things that are going on outside our municipality, in South Bruce, for example, with the nuclear stuff, with Bruce Power. We're in a prime target to talk about this stuff. But if we're going to continue to kick the pipe down the pile, we shouldn't expect the Taj Mahal to come land on our door, because that's not going to happen. That's the reality that I see.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Go ahead, Vicki.
Through you, Mr. Reeve. Just another example, and to give an example to highlight what Deputy Reeve was saying. For example, we have created an economic development dashboard that sits on our website. It is compiled stats and data and information about Huron County. It is the most current that we can possibly provide from a number of different sources. So it's there as raw data. What we hope to do with that next is create a template for a community profile, which would be a partner municipality profile, but a template of things you could put into a community profile. And then turn that template over to the individual municipalities to work with. The purpose of a community profile is investment attraction. So when you go to woo a business into your area, and you have such opportunity in North Huron being so close to Bruce Nuclear to woo those associated businesses to your area, you would take that community profile as well as an inventory list of available lands or buildings for development. And in your conversation with that potential business, you're not just selling that, you know, they would have Wi-Fi, they would have servicing on that land. You're selling the lifestyle as well of Huron County. So the combination of the community profile, which we will help you build, and the inventory, which you'll have much better control of with an individual officer, you now have a package to go and do direct investment attraction for your area. And that's what I mean when we'll support and we'll align to help someone in your municipality, whether it is your CAO off the corner of his desk or whether it's an economic development officer. It depends how fast you want to move forward with those objectives. But the type of thing that we do at the county is trying to help you reach your economic development goals. And I am more than happy to help you work on your economic development strategic plan. It's very helpful for me to be involved in that process, to understand what your goals are. And then we know how to help develop some products to help you as a municipality, no matter which way you want to go, reach your objectives. So we know, for example, that you need that community profile right away because you're going to do some foreign direct investment work, for example. So again, those are the types of things that we can do to support your staff, whether it's a designated position or not. That's not for me to decide, but we will definitely support staff in their economic development efforts to the best of our ability. But again, our work is very county-wide.
Thank you, Vicki. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. To Vicki, do you know for the municipalities that do not have an economic development officer, what do they do? How do they handle any residential development or whatever befalls them?
It varies. So like yourselves, there are others with economic development committees. And then really they task staff. Some of the member municipalities have their clerks work on economic development initiatives. They might have communications staff who work on economic development initiatives. They work closely with their BIAs or their chambers to look at some of that community level economic development. But the ones who are seeing the most impact are Central Huron and Huron East.
Thank
Of
you,
which
Vicki.
they're double our size.
They're double your size, but they do have dedicated staff as well.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I'm gonna go ahead, Paul. Paul, you're muted. Paul, you're muted, Paul. There you go.
Through you, Reeve. Thank you, Vicki, for your update there. As I say, being a new counselor, I didn't know all these things that you provided here. I see how you seem to be pushing to have a staff member in line for this. But you did say they are a little bit bigger spots. But I notice the top four on Huron County, the top four municipalities across here at the north end, none of them have it. And I noticed something was in the paper there from ACW, and they had the largest increase asset, like taxes, like highest brought into the warden talked about it there on the paper, or the Reed Mayor. And how do they do it? Like you said, to woo a business in, you need an inventory list. So what all is in that inventory list? Acres and acres, or what? I'm just curious on that.
Vicky,
Well,
just before I hand it, please, sorry, Vicky, just
No
before
problem.
I hand over, ACW, all the money they're getting in is along the shoreline. They have the bluffs there with almost 1,000 new houses, and they've got another 400. It is not from the farmland. It is not from the villages. They are not part of Goderich. They have been blessed by being along that lake shore, and I'm one that can contest what I paid for my cottage and what I sold it for. It was like not working for 5 years. I made so much money, but who'd known I'd had 10 of them. Anyway, so Paul, that's the biggest. Now I'm going to hand it over to Vicky. Sorry, Vicky.
Thank you, Mr. Reeve, and absolutely no problem. So first of all, I would say I'm not pushing for an economic development officer for you. That is your decision. I'm trying to be clear on the limits of our ability to serve you. And the comment was made earlier that we are quite reactive, which is true. So I had a business most recently who came to me and said, I have one location in Huron County. I want 4 more. I want one in Brussels. I want one in Wingham. I want one in Goderich, and I want one in Exeter. Help me find the spaces. So I'm helping this individual find those spaces. So, or Alex Ripley is actually helping the individual find those spaces. We don't have a lands inventory at the moment. That is a gap in the tools that we need in our department. So we're working with planning right now to build that, and almost one request at a time. So as I try to help this individual find 4 commercial properties across Huron County, and he has an order of priority, I will be coming to your CAO and saying, what do you have? I need a commercial property for this individual. But it's a reactive process. And so as you saw those gaps that were mentioned earlier where new development isn't happening, we just haven't had requests to assist. One of the advantages of having your own designated officer is that they can be proactive. And so they can start to look at your business mix. They can start to look at your available lands. They can start to look at companies that would provide assets along your existing value chains, and they can go out and target and recruit. We will never be able to do that at this stage, at the size that we're at, but we will always respond and try to help development across the county. And I don't know, Councillor Heffer, if that really answers your question, but we will always respond and do our best for every single one of our member municipalities. But as I outlined the staffing complement, you can see that, you know, to do that direct investment attraction, I have the potential of 2 staff, and they are already fully at capacity, working in the sectors that they're working in and doing some of that higher level work. So I don't want to promise you the moon and not be able to deliver it. I want to be very clear that we will react, we will develop tools to assist, we will work on tools to make us more efficient in what we do. But at the moment, we are not capable of going out and doing direct recruitment or foreign direct investment or that sort of thing right now. So.
Thanks a lot, Vicki. Anyone else? Anyone else? I'm just going to touch on this a bit on my 3 years, my 3-year journey. So I look at it this way. Over the past 3 years, we put ourselves a nice big store together. But we don't have anybody to take your money when you come in through or show you where the goods are. Okay, that's where we're sitting right now. 40 years ago, when it comes to Hutton Heights, somebody got the idea of buying it and turning it into development. That development is going to be, I think, 3 times bigger than we're looking at right now because of situations that are going on. So in our 3 years, what we've done as a council is we've gone from no store to a store. We're filling the store up, but we don't have any employees in there. It'd be like buying a tractor if you own a farm and say, I got 2 tractors now, but there's only one of me to drive the tractor. It doesn't work, right? You need to also hire somebody to drive that tractor if you're going to buy it. Jan Hawley, who we just spoke about, I didn't know who Jan Hawley was. She invited me to a golf game with a few other people from different communities to get to know each other. Jan Hawley came to a lot of our meetings when we were losing people. We didn't have people to keep the factories going, and she helped. And again, she made connections for me with 3 local small house builders that could help us if we got that far, introduced me to different people. That's economic development. The internet that's going to finally come to East Wawanosh. That was never meant to be. I don't know if you guys understand this, because we had not a lot of say at the county level. A guy by the name of Jody Codery, who Vicki just took over for, he went out on a limb, and I'm not going to get into a conversation about an in-camera meeting, but he took a shit kicking to get that for us. And we worked hard on that. And that's economic development. Without Vicki's predecessor, you wouldn't have that right now. Also on top of that, this is just your Reeve working his hours and working with this. I see this as really important because we are sitting on, and again, sorry guys, I can't go into details. Dwayne and I are sitting on, I'm going to say $100 million worth of work going on right now between all the different things we're working on. He's doing it from the side of his desk. We're talking to each other on Sundays and Saturdays, especially when the A2A was on the go. Like, they have a different time slot. Dwayne and I are talking to each other at midnight trying to make that work. The 100 million I'm talking about has nothing to do with A2A. I don't even care about it anymore because we've moved on. But you can't do it. Dwayne has too much on the go. I see and I think we are to the point where an economic development person, in my opinion, it's time for them to step up, because this old Reeves, putting a lot of hours in it, but it's really not my position, as I've been told a few times, that I'm not supposed to get down into the weeds. Although I love it. Thank you guys. It reminds me of my back in the 80s and 90s when I was flying high. I've just absolutely loved it. But the town needs to set itself up now so that it can move forward. We have the development going on. We're spending the money. We need somebody out there to go find them. I won't go into a lot of details because I know I bore everybody to death, but this council has done something that hasn't been seen in 40 years. The world needs housing. We need housing. We need factories. It's all there. They're developing in Listowel, and they're going right over us and developing in Kincardine. That's our fault. Not the staff's fault, not the world's fault. That's our council's fault for not being proactive. So I'm just suggesting that it could not be better timing. It could not be better timing. Let's put together, continue to get rid of the land that's not in our territory. Let's put land together as we're doing, and let's sell it. We have lots of opportunity, but you honestly, as Vicki has said, they don't have the people to do it, and they've got a large territory to cover. They will work with us, but it is up to us to do it. And I think right now is the time to do it. You have an economic development committee, and they're pushing hard on a lot of things and they've done a lot of work, but they're volunteers too, just kind of like we are as counselors. So we need somebody that can take a hold of that, because when we say we want to do this, this, and this, well, we look at each other and we go, Anita, you and Kevin, you can talk to this. Who's going to do it? The volunteers that are actually taking time out of the day. You've got bankers there, you got business people there, you got farmers there, you got the whole, everything you'd ever want there. We're making decisions that should come back to council. I see that the economic development person would formulate everything that the committee's working on, put it before the committee, put it in a proper position, and then bring it before council and say, hey, council, we've done all this work. It's right here. What do you think? And that's the way the committee should work. It's not independent of council. It does not tell council what to do, but they are volunteers. So we need, and they know what's going on around us. So we have abundance of opportunity, but Dwayne does not have time to do it. I can tell you that right now. And I hope he's willing to speak up about that too. It's totally up to him, but he has worked his heart out to get us here. And we're not juggling, switching a couple of old buildings. We're talking tons and tons of work that have gone on and opportunities there. And it's so close I can taste it, but I can't quite reach out to get it because I don't have the time either. Dwayne doesn't have the time, but we are putting in our 40, 50 hours a week to make it work. And it would be lovely if we could see something come to an end, as we're going to see with the East Wawanosh getting the phone service and that. I won't babble on anymore, guys. Questions, comments, concerns, please. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Rafe. I look at cost. Like I agree a person could accomplish some things. We don't know what they'll do. We have no job description. That is very important to me. And thank you, Lisa, Vicky, for your information. We know what county can provide us now. But you know, if they work hard and they're paid $100 grand or better than 100 with benefits, okay, did they bring it in? It has to be that way. This is a position, like a lot of our staff, you can't do this with, but this person, yes, you can. What did they bring in? Because if they are paid 100 grand and they brought in 100,000 in increased taxation, that doesn't work for me. And that's year after year after year. So it is vitally important to me, Reeve. I agree with a lot of things you're saying and others. There isn't a, I'd like to know what Dwayne, like I know Dwayne's been doing it for years off the side of his desk, like you said. We've got a Hutton Heights just on the verge of taking off. We've got, you know, who knows, but there's for sale sign basically out there. Like, what will that do? Were people calling you, making inquiries, Dwayne, and probably you, Reeve? You know, are you accomplishing the job to get a developer out there? Like, if it's not working, then I'm tipping a little bit your way. But if it is working, if there are people sort of knocking on the door now, then to me, the job is, that particular job is done. We don't have any commercial land. That's why there's a hole, like Councillor Faulkner said, we've got a hole here. Well, we have no new commercial industrial land to develop. And maybe that's something that would be good thing to purchase someday if we were ever able to. Then there would be reason for an economic development officer. So I'm softening up to the HR person, okay? But I don't think we can handle the increased expense of another staff person of this value, we'll say. Like, it's terribly important to me, and I feel like I say it often, but we have to think about the taxpayer. I think we'd be letting them down because we would not be moving forward. We might on paper, you know, technically, when you get into the weeds and what have you, but As far as finances, I don't think in the taxation that we're laying upon our citizens out there, I don't think we'd be doing them a favor. Thank
Chris.
you.
Thanks, Chris. I just like to answer that, and then I'll send it over to Deputy Reeve Sykes. So what we've been doing in the past doesn't work. What we've been doing in the past without a person there is we're running pipes, and our tax dollars are running pipes into other communities, and they're collecting the tax dollars. What you've seen, because of the hard work and dedication that's going on, is that is changing. What we're saying is now it has changed, and now is the time that you need somebody there to direct it. And it's short term and long term. The best things that ended up that'll take place in your life are long term work. Costs a lot of money for you to buy that 200 acres, Chris, but it paid off. But I'll bet you had a few sleepless nights. Should I, shouldn't I? And that's the sleepless nights that we counselors right now are having over this. Should we or shouldn't we? So only you could answer, was it a good idea? And I don't know whether you bought it 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but I'm pretty sure at the time it'd be the same thoughts you're having now. I think it's a good idea. I think it's time to move forward. I think everybody has got us to the point, and we, as I said, we've got so much going on. Let's not stop now. This is just the next chapter. I don't think we'll ever find a Jan Hawley. God is my witness. I hope we do, but she was just amazing at her job. And if you were to talk to Jan Hawley 3 times in your life, you'd say, yeah, let's get that person, because that, and actually Bernie McClellan was teasing me. He thought I was going to hire her on away from him. So anyway, I'm going to hand it over to Deputy Sykes. Sorry, Deputy Reeve.
So, yeah, thank you, Reeve. You know, I don't disagree with some of the comments Councillor Palmer has. I mean, is there a risk? Absolutely, there's a risk. The concern is that, you know, when we have this in the budget, and you, as if we put it in the budget, the conversation is that the CAO is going to come back with a job description, going to come back with directions, going to come back with directives. At the end of the day, I think what the CAO, if he hasn't recognized this already, is the fact of the matter is this is not a job where you're just going to have, if you are not successful, you are not going to be around. I mean, we're just not going to continue to have you pay a salary just because we think an economic development officer is the good thing. There's going to be benchmarks in place, a strategic plan that indicates that type of stuff. That's what's going to be coming, you know, as Councillor Palmer, those are the things that you as a councillor and we as council as combined can give those directions, can give those insights to the CAO and to Vicky and to others that says, this is what we want to see. Here's the goals that we want to get out of this. And will I say, can you honestly say to that person, you need to give me this in 1 to 2 years? No. What you need to have is a 5-year thing, and say, if you can't get something within 5 years, maybe you're not the right person for the job, but you got to give them at least the chance to do it. I mean, and arguably the fact of the matter is if you don't do it, what could you be losing? I mean, that's the thing, is because if everything's reactionary, if you're waiting for that phone call to be picked up and to call Dwayne's office, it may never happen. The intention is that we should be pushing our people to call those businesses. Call Bruce Power, call this, call that, be on the phone, trying to coordinate something that we can have so that we don't just sit and wait and think the $1 million is going to show up, because it's not. It's not going to happen that way anymore. Business doesn't go that way. So I think of it as just, this conversation is, because all the conversation has been, do we keep it in the budget for the conversation? And I think we keep it in and let Dwayne and his team come back to the council with a job description, with a market assessment, all that stuff. Then council can decide, does that make sense for us? What is the goal? What's the deal? There's nothing, just because it's in the budget, we still have to approve a job description. We still have to do a whole bunch of other things before we even get to a hire.
Thank you very much, Debbie Reeve-Sipes. Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Reeve. Now, just a little comeback to that. All we've heard yet is that, oh, we expect a position to be filled almost in April. Like, that's what we're hearing. It's a done deal in April. And I, you know, if I'm to go along with this, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, all right, we'll get a job description. Then we'll decide, we'll argue all the same points that we did just recently. And then we'll decide whether we go for it. But please, I don't want to hear, well, it's expected to be filled in April.
So I'll touch on that. There's nobody in mind. There's no job description. Dwayne and I actually spoke about this as early as yesterday. There's no job description but put together because we're deciding what and how and what's the best avenue to put before council that would do the township of North Huron the greatest amount of good. So Chris, you can have my word that there is nobody already. And if there's somebody that pops in April, it's going to only be because we have a job description that's come before and been accepted by all of council. And then it's gone out and somebody right out of the blue came. But I don't think it's going to be quite that easy because this is I don't think you guys realize that economic development is in high demand. And if you're good at your job, you've got 4 job offers at all times. It's a unique way of life. So go ahead, Vicki.
I just wanted to add a comment and give you an example. One of the other things that an individual economic development officer can do for you is actually find funding. So for example, the most recent Main Street Activator application intake, which was for local projects, the application that we put in partnering with Community Futures Huron was not successful. The funding though was successful. A project was funded in Central Huron and led by Angela Smith, and a project was funded in Huron East led by Maureen Agar. And so there are various opportunities where we can look at partnering across the county to apply for funding to assist you with your economic development activities through your economic development committee. But again, we take a county-wide approach. And so just to consider, there is the advantage of individual applications. And again, that's something that would fall under, that I would suggest if you hire a staff member should fall under their direction. Whereas right now, your CAO will be doing that off the corner of his desk as well. And it's just another thing to consider, that they have different ways of bringing funds into the community as well to support the work they do. And again, the county would be more than happy, I would be more than happy to consult with Dwayne on that job description. And once, if you decide to have staff, once you had staff, I believe they should be in leading your strategic plan development, but we would be happy to support that development as well, should you go that way.
Thank you very much. Deputy
Reeve, I just wanted to make sure the April discussion, Councillor Palmer, is just for the fact that that is what we had to put in. So the budget for wages for that position is April to December. So it's that's the best case scenario, assuming everything else gets approved, like a job description, a market test, all that stuff by council after the fact. It was never the intention of the fact of the matter is that the minute you put it in the budget, it's a slam dunk, we're moving to hire. Like that's not the intent. The intent is make sure it's in the budget, then go through the job description, all that stuff, make sure we as council are understanding of the job description, understand that from a staff perspective, and then move the acceptance through a vote motion of council that says, Dwayne, you now have acceptance of, here's a job description. Please go and try to look for a person to hire that. That is the intent that has always been involved, at least from my perspective. It has never been an intent to just put it in the budget and say, this conversation is, yeah, we get it in the budget and oh, by the way, Dwayne, you've got your calling out, or just go and hire somebody. That has not been the intent ever in my mind.
Thank you very much. Paul, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Reeve. I just am curious. I heard somewhere along there somebody talked about contract. Can these positions be contracts? So maybe that you're not tied down for a long period of time if things are working right? Would Dwayne be coming up with a description where it could maybe be a contract job? I'm just throwing that out to Vicky if that's positions like that out there as contract.
Well, for example, currently 5 of the 10 staff that work in my department are on contract. Part of that is because of the source of funding for the work that they do, but it's not an uncommon practice. The only thing I would add to that is in today's current job market, it is an employee's market, not an employer's market. And so a factor in an employee deciding to take a position, you know, obviously they will be looking for the best possible position, and contracting gives you a certain level of risk in that they might leave, but it also gives you a certain level of security when you're testing out a new position. So it's not uncommon, but just to make you aware, I mean, you're aware of the current workforce shortage, but what that really means is a potential employee has lots of choice. And so some businesses are, you know, moving to a bonusing system. If you sign with us, we'll give you a bonus. For some employees, it's very important to have those benefits because they have a family and they don't get that with a contract. So there are pros and cons to both approaches, but most definitely, Councillor Heffer, contracting is not uncommon in economic development, as it is not uncommon in many workplaces.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, that's a conversation or thoughts and that the CAO will be looking over before he brings something before council with the pros and the cons. Thank you for bringing that up, Paul. Very good. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much, Vicky, for coming out and having this conversation with us. You've definitely helped us take some of the muddiness out of the water. And we can see that we can work hand in hand together. And we also see that you are short-staffed, a lot on the go, and no, there's not a designated person that can just run out and help us from start to finish on a project. They will come and go because they're doing projects for other communities too. So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Reeve, and thank you, Council. And I look forward to seeing you again to discuss the BRNE soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Wait, sorry, Dwayne, did you want to speak to any of the, I apologize, Dwayne, before Vicky left, you should have spoken. You're okay?
Yeah, through your worship, just in terms of, so, and really just to recircle back a little bit, just in terms of, so our approach right now is reactionary, just as far as, and I do get inquiries in response to Councillor Palmer's question there. I do get inquiries, and from a staff's perspective, we respond to the inquiry. We're not pursuing or chasing anything in that respect. And I just also want to circle back in terms of with Vicky's involvement or invitation to join us. Really, it's intended just to, there were questions, as I understand, raised in terms of, you know, we're currently contributing towards the county's levy for county's economic development services. And the question, as I understand that was being raised, is, you know, what does the county economic development services offer? And so hence, that's the invitation that was extended to Vicky to join us, and as well to answer any questions at council regarding those services that we currently have available to us. I think part of the conversation is just in terms of, as been pointed a few times, you know, economic development, you know, in terms of the Economic Development Committee and their work and their involvement. And, you know, economic development for me, you know, has been, you know, off the side of my desk. working on different residential projects, for example, and responding to inquiries that we get from industries and that. And I think it, in terms of part of the conversation, I think is in terms of how council would like me to be spending my time in the current role I'm doing, maintaining the current situation. If that was council's desire, certainly that can continue. If council want to allocate more resources and see more emphasis, I guess I'll call it, in the area of the economic development, certainly this is an opportunity if that was council's wish. The other thing I'll maybe just mention here, or I guess I'll also mention in terms of the job description, Vicky and I, so typically what the process is that council makes a decision in terms of whether or not they wish to have a position or not. And if council allocates the dollars, then the process is that staff develop the job description, and has been pointed out by Councillor Sipe, Deputy Reeve Sipe, we'll bring that back to council. And council has to approve that job description before the position itself is actually created. And in terms of what that job description is and what it looks like, I did talk to Vicky earlier this week, and she indicated that she'd be more than happy to work in the development of that if that was what council wished to move forward with. The other thing I'll maybe just mention here, and not to get into a long conversation, just in terms of we currently have a position within the municipality that, and I've been back and forth with Vicky, Director of Recreation, on this in terms of, looking to do some, bringing forward a revised job description for an individual within the municipality. And the conversation around that has been, shifting the focus of that position to more what I'll refer to as a community engagement coordinator. So an individual who would work with our business improvement associations, an individual who would work with events, for example, the Aspen Roll Festival, the Business Improvement Association in Wingham, for example, has the Festival Lantern, for example. So working with those community groups and organizations in terms of moving that forward. So that is something that will be brought forward for council's consideration as well. We started a little bit of a conversation with Vicky, and in terms of, is that a separate position, or is that a position that would work with the economic development person if that was council's desire? So from a structural organizational perspective, just something to keep in the back of your minds, perhaps. And you'll be receiving a report on Monday around that, and we'll be looking for staff will be looking for some direction from council. So just something to keep in mind as you discuss and deliberate as far as whether or not you wish to proceed with an economic development position or not. So I'll leave it at that unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. Any questions for Dwayne? Okay, I'm not seeing any. We're going to move on then. I think we had a good, robust conversation. So we're going to move on to that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts the 2022 budget in principle, and further that the council directs staff to proceed with scheduling the public meeting and presentation for budget for final adoption on February 7th, 2022 regular meeting, and further that the tax rate bylaw be brought forward for adoption once all tax rate information becomes available. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Councillor McBurney seconding. Last chance for conversation or questions. Not hearing or seeing any, I hand it over to you, Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, I'll just reiterate the motion on the floor. So the motion is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts the 2022 budget in principle, and further that council directs staff to proceed with scheduling the public meeting and presenting the budget for final adoption at the February 7th, 2022 regular meeting, and further that the tax rate bylaw be brought forward for adoption once all tax rate information becomes available. So Councillor Van Hitterson? Councillor Van Henderson,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
No, not happy.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reef Site,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
No.
and Reef Bailey.
Yes.
And Reef Bailey. So that motion carries 5-2, with the noes being Councillor Heffer and Councillor Palmer. So with that, so move agenda item 7, next meeting. So there, with that direction, there will be no next budget meeting, but we will schedule the public meeting, and we will get the advertisements out for notice of that statutory public meeting for February 7th.
Thank you very kindly. Moving to 8, confirmatory bylaw, the bylaw number 01-2022, being a bylaw of the Township of North Huron to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by the Council of Township of North Huron at the January 13th, 2022 meeting, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, and signed by the Reeve and clerk and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Seconder, please. I have Rick McBurney seconding. Thank you. Carson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reef Site,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
and Reef Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. 9, adjournment, that the Council of the Township of North Huron agree with there being no further business before council. The meeting be hereby adjourned at 11:16. Do I have a mover? I have Paul Heffer moving. Seconder, please. I have Rick McBurney seconding. Carson, one line last time.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reef Site. Looks like Deputy Reef Site's absent. Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum, and Reef Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 6-0 with Deputy Reef Site being absent.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. We'll talk another time. Some of you in a few minutes, actually. Bye now.